What do you guys think? Should we get started?
Yeah.
Let's just do it? All right, cool. All right, so first things first, guys, if you have questions along the way, feel free to ask, because I'm okay with that. I've been in some presentations where people are like, no questions. Wait till the end. But just jump in anytime you have a question. We'll get a little dialogue. So a little bit about myself. I've been part of special ed since I was 16. I was a volunteer in a class with like kids with intellectual disabilities, like Down syndrome and stuff like that when I was in high school. And then that led to me being a TA for 4 years while I was in college. And then since I was 23, I've been a teacher. And I've been teaching all over the world, like Kuwait, Dominican Republic. I worked at the Carol Morgan School, some of you guys might know. It's in our tri-association. Where else did I work? Ethiopia. Some of you guys might know it's on the continent of Africa, somewhere way far away. And so my Pushin experience, my co-teaching started in my second year. And it was in a biology class. So 9th grade biology, and they wanted to include all the students in the special day program. Are some of you guys familiar with the special day program in the US? This is in California. So it's basically like, if you have kids here or like wherever that are resourced, maybe they need a little learning support, kids in the special day program are at a lower level academically. So they maybe can do half the standards in a year. So they have a special teacher, right? But they wanted to take all of us and all of my kids and put them in a biology class. So a couple days before school, they said, hey, all your kids are not going to do science with you. You're going to co-teach with this biology teacher. And they said, get to work. So we started co-teaching, and we piloted the program. That was like 13 years ago. That was my first experience, and I've done a ton since. And in LA, I was the high-functioning students with autism inclusion teacher. So I worked with a ton of teachers there. It was crazy. Like, we had block scheduling, so from August to February was one class, and then you get new teachers from February to June. So I taught with like 40 teachers that year. And hey, newcomers, I got a little handout.
Chairs over here, ladies.
Want to grab a handout out here? And so, yeah. So in LA, I taught with a ton of teachers, and I co-taught in chemistry, biology, physical science, English 8, English 9, English 10, US history, math 8, algebra 1, geometry, and currently I'm in the 8th grade.
And will your co-teaching models apply to elementary as well?
There's got some case management stuff here in my notes. I'm not sure, like, because we were talking before about how the models are here. I think a lot of times it will, like next year I'm going to be elementary learning support, and I plan to do similar things, so I would say yes. And then let's see how it works along the way. All right, first things first, what made you choose this session? I'm kind of curious if we have regular teachers or learning support.
I have 2 kids with dyslexia in my class.
Okay.
And I have 23 students, and I mean, I'm not pushing it. I wish someone was.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a TA at all? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, the last slide talks about how to do it without a support. Any other reasons why people are coming? Do we have learning support teachers? We got a couple over here, right? Any of you guys? Okay. You look familiar. Were you here last year? Or do you work at the school?
I learned here.
Oh, that's why. What about classroom teachers? Do we have any regular ed teachers? Oh, no? Where's the inclusion? Oh, okay. Well, what made you guys join up?
Learn how to support my students in a better way.
Have you worked with like a special ed teacher or a learning support teacher?
I've had some students.
Just in small group instruction, not in
okay.
co-teaching in the classroom, right? Yeah.
She would have had co-teaching previous years.
Yeah.
Someone else that we know.
What about you?
Well, this is my first year teaching, so even though I know the theories and everything I need,
Okay.
and I'm working with talented kids,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not the same because they are totally
Yeah.
quite very different. So.
Uh-huh. Well, my working definition, I'll show you guys later, is for gifted, talented, and students with special needs. Am I allowed to do that still in 2019? It's different. There's differences. So guys, just so we're on the same page, what do you think of when you hear push and support or co-teaching? Lori?
Well, I was thinking about it in two different ways. Like push-in support is when the learning support teacher just goes into the classroom to assist the classroom teacher. Whereas co-teaching to me means that you've planned with that teacher and that each of you have decided which part of the teaching you're going to do.
Okay. So that leads to my next question. Is there a difference between co-teaching and push-in? So here we have a yes. Other people? Uh-oh. What do you think?
Yes, definitely.
Oh, no.
And,
I don't agree.
When you
Uh-oh.
come in as a just learning support and you're pushing in,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have as much ownership of the lesson,
Yeah.
and you don't. Sometimes you feel like, well, gee, I really know that. I know a really good way to teach that, but you don't feel comfortable enough to, kind of
Step in.
ask the teacher,
Yeah.
well, can I do this?
Yeah, I know the feeling. What are you thinking?
Sorry, I disagree.
Okay, what are you thinking?
I respectfully disagree.
I respectfully disagree. Like, whether they're the same or different, kind of depends on the definitions of the teachers that you're working with.
Mhm.
But when you're pushing in, even if you're like deemed to go in to help a certain group of students, you're still helping. Yes, you might have your eye on a few kids, but you're helping all of them. So as the teacher's explaining stuff, even if you haven't necessarily planned it, when you see the glazed look on like the kids in the classroom, usually when we do push in, or even if it's non-planned, when the kids have the glazed look, I'll literally translate what the teacher has just said into something that I know they'll get, and they'll be like, oh, okay, and then we just continue. But it's like a seamless, like bouncing back and forth as needed and helping whoever needs it. Is when I find that it works the best.
I do agree with that. However, when I see co-teaching, I'm thinking that maybe the other teacher is going to step back and maybe be the support teacher while I'm doing the main teaching in the room for part of the time. Because I know we all help all students.
For sure, and that's what this presentation is about, the different models, the different ways that we can step in, step out. So for me, I think there might not be a difference between co-teaching and push-in in the sense that this is my working definition. So I wonder if you guys agree with this. So push-in support is when a learning support or gifted teacher helps develop or implement. So maybe they don't co-plan, but they're in the room and they're having small groups and stuff like that. Implement activities and supports in a general ed class that are geared towards including as many students with as many varying needs as possible in the learning outcomes. What do you guys think about that?
Agree.
You cool with that?
Completely agree.
That's kind of how I look at it. Partly because I've done the real co-teaching where it's like we have a shared grade book and like everybody, like my name is on the door, and like at parent conferences I'm there too, all that stuff. But the problem I found is a lot of times they can only do that with one class. So if they can only do that with one class and then they have 5 other classes, it makes things kind of difficult. Does that make sense? Like you do all this great stuff, but then they can't do it in the other classes. So for me, I like to just make sure that I'm planning with the teachers, developing stuff, or at least implementing things. Maybe the teacher plans some differentiation and they're like, Beckett, can you work with this group? And da-da-da-da-da. So that's kind of the working definition for today. So guys, the objectives, we're going to talk about 6 models of push-in / co-teaching support, give some examples, and give some tips on how to have a good relationship with the teacher. All right? It's not too crazy. It's not going to be no like scavenger hunts or anything like that, but you know, I got you guys a worksheet. Did everybody get a worksheet? No thing? All right. So guys, speaking of the worksheet, I was thinking, I wasn't sure about the space and how many people, so I just thought we'd do 3 corners, and you guys would go there, but I think we'll just stay at the tables. But one thing I'm curious about is if you could rate your level of knowledge about push-in from a 1 to a 3. So 1 is like, I don't really know, da-da-da-da. A 2 would be like, I had classes, I kind of understand some theory, but I haven't implemented. And 3 is like, I got this. So who of you would rate yourself as a 1? You kind of just don't know much about push-in support. Oh, we got several. Okay, cool. What about 2s? Like you feel kind of, and then the rest are just killing it, crushing it? All right, cool. All right, so guys, right now what I want you guys to do at your tables is just briefly share what you think some of those push-in models are on this paper, and start filling in as much as you can. Make sure you're on the practice side, because the other side I want you to kind of take away and,
We're looking at
All right, guys, let's wrap it up. Let's bring it back. So don't worry if you didn't finish. This is just kind of to get you guys talking a little bit. The second page is where we're going to fill it out towards the end, and hopefully you guys will keep that and you can put it on your bulletin board, and it can help you be a genius. But all right. So first, this is the first co-teaching model. What would you guys call this co-teaching model?
Traditional.
Traditional?
No, sorry. Yeah, that's traditional.
All right. What else would you guys say?
Teacher and TA.
Teacher and a TA? But that's true. But this is one of them is a learning support teacher. One of them is the regular teacher. So that's kind of why maybe this isn't the best approach if people are seeing this person as a TA. So I got this slide. I got this image from Ready, Set, Co-Teach, and I like them. They're a good resource. And what they call it, and what a lot of us call it, is one teach, one support. So this is like the most common model. We see that a lot. My question is, what are your experiences or thoughts about the one teach, one assist model? When you see that, you guys said traditional, is traditional bad, is traditional good?
Well, I think it depends on, one day it may work and then another day it may not. So I think you have to be flexible enough to do all of them.
True. What depends on the subject?
And sometimes it's not for the entire subject, the entire class. Sometimes like at the beginning and then you move on to another part.
So you have some direct instruction and then you walk, I walk around, I push kids, make sure they're waking up. Like, dude, come on, you gotta work. Has anybody ever done this where like that's all they did, or have they seen that where it's kind of like this is, you go in every day and that's what you do as like a learning support? Or?
It's very common.
It's very common. That's kind of, for me, this is the easiest approach, and this is the one I've seen most commonly. Because it's a lot of times, like I said, my first experience, a few days before school, they just pushed us together, and they said, you guys are co-teachers. And we were both like, what do we do? And so what happened is, we did that a lot at the first few months. It was like she teaches, and I kind of walk around, and I help clarify questions and stuff like that. But that's not the most ideal model. And then these days, I do it more than I'd like to, but I try to vary who I help. I think somebody was saying that back here. You don't want to work necessarily with the same kid, so I'll try to work with different groups or different kids. Also, I try to plan with the teacher and have things differentiated. So maybe I'm doing the support thing, but we have different worksheets, and we have them leveled, and we've tiered, and we've planned out how to support the kids. So the teacher might be at the front of the class doing his thing, but on the back end last week, we kind of planned it out. So that's kind of one thing I try to do. And then another thing is multitask as much as possible. So a lot of times I'll be supporting and I'll see a student need and then I'll take a note and I'll say, okay, let me try this intervention next time I see them in my pull-out class, and I'll take another note, or I'll think of things to put on a study guide. So the teacher's talking and then I'm sitting there like putting together a little study guide or something like that. Any other thoughts about the one teach?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You work with one class only?
That's a good question. Maybe I should have outlined it more. So I work in 3 classes.
Okay.
So I work in 2 math classes, 8th grade math, and then an English class. So the kids, they're kind of clustered.
Okay.
So it kind of went like where they're in 2 math classes, and then there's like 6 kids in 1 English class. So I work with those teachers.
And you go in every day?
For the most part, yeah. But it also depends on the need. Like the English, I don't go as much as math, because the English is a little bit more, what do you say, like fudgeable. Like there's a wide spectrum of acceptability. You're like, oh, this looks pretty good. Whereas math, it's like, that's wrong. So a lot of times the teacher's like, hey, things are going good, and then I might not go, but we're always co-planning though every week.
So you do some pull out and some push.
And then I have a pull-out class, like a resource class.
Okay.
So all of the kids that are in all those classes are in that one class. And that's where we work on strategies, we work on their goals, we work on the content. Maybe we do a lot of English in there. So they might not need my help in the class, but they need more time and they need more like scaffolding during the pull-out and stuff like that. All right, so guys, my thesis is this. My main argument is that back in the day, maybe you didn't have students with special needs. A lot of people are like, I don't know, especially in international schools, like I started in 2011 in the Dominican Republic, and my job was pretty new. And I see it all over the place. Like, there's not a lot of learning support. So a lot of teachers in the past, they didn't deal with kids because they got kicked out. So maybe that's where you're coming from. Or maybe you've had no learning support, and you've had kids with special needs, and they sink or swim. Have you guys seen that? Like, where the kids just go, and if they have too much trouble, they get a tutor. If that doesn't work, they're counseled out. Counseled out from those counselors. Where those counselors at? I see you guys back here. But, or maybe you've done some support. You had a learning support teacher, but you've just done one teach, one support. Or it's like with TAs. A lot of times I've seen teachers work with TAs, and they don't know how to work with them. So they're just like, hey, make copies, walk around. And my thesis is that's old school. So we have to be doing a lot of different models. So if you want to go beyond, as we're talking about, the next Pushin models will help you with that. So if doing one teach, one support is cool, and it has its time and place, but the other models I want to share are where things are at. All right, so, bam. What would you call this one here? What are you thinking?
One teaching, one supporting, one observing.
One observe. Ah, that's what it's called. She got it.
Yeah, one teach, one watch.
One observe.
One teach, one observe.
So,
we were right.
what kind of situations do you think that would be helpful in?
With a son, I just think exactly just coming in and
Observing
observing a student.
a student? Yeah. So maybe you guys have a new behavior plan, and you want to see how it's doing, and you're tallying, stuff like that. What other reasons might you want to have one teach, one observe?
See if you're
Ladies first.
not to check out your teaching
Yeah,
for
definitely.
feedback.
That's true. And that's, yeah, there's been times when I've wanted to offer to do that, and I was like, I'm not gonna. For certain reasons, I'm like, hey, do you want me to see how you answer questions?
So you're trying to try out a new strategy to give more access points to your class. So for instance, you were trying out open-ended questioning, and so your buddy teacher's going to help you tally
Exactly.
how often you actually use the strategy and what the student response was.
That's a good point. I was going to say that you're stealing my. Did you go hack my slide? But then also, what else do I have? Just like seating plans too. Maybe you change the seats, and then you want somebody to see how the kids are interacting, and it's hard to do when one teacher's teaching. So you might have learning support or somebody observe from the side. All right. Next one. What would you call this one? Split. So that's basically what it is. It's, I usually call it parallel teaching. And this one's a little weird, but like to say like I don't always do it. But basically what you do is one teacher teaches a smaller group and they teach the exact same thing. But we do it for different reasons. So like, what kind of reasons could you guys see having like a separate group like that? Or like what are the benefits or whatever?
Just that some kids have different learning needs, like the pace, yeah. Pace also, you try to add you onto your
Oh yeah. So that will happen a lot of times, like in a bigger group, 25 kids, maybe kids don't want to ask questions. But if we have 12 kids, they have different learning needs, they can be like, hey, I didn't get that, can you repeat that? And kind of keep that going. Any other ideas on?
Maybe different teaching styles, teaching and learning styles.
Okay, yeah, like different modality, like to kind of present it in a different way. That's kind of
differentiate.
for sure. I'm trying to think how that connects. Yeah, all right, let's go. Because the other models do with the differentiation a lot. And to be honest, like I said, this is a little strange to me. I haven't done it that much. I don't have a ton of experience, so I couldn't say yes or no.
Just to clarify, Beckett, it's the same teaching but taught in a different way by the two teachers, or are they actually just going to present the lesson?
So that's where like I didn't want to say exactly. So in my experience, it's been like the same thing pretty much, very similar. But we have another model we're going to go over called alternative teaching, and that's where it's definitely separate. So this is more like kind of just like you're doing the same kind of guiding questions, and you know, you just have it so you have small groups and people can interact more. What are you going to say?
I was thinking, could this be just like, it's not about the teaching, but about the specific group? but you need maybe to split
Yeah.
leaders, group leaders that will not let others
True, true.
participate.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of change the dynamics a bit,
Yeah.
for sure. And then I got a couple notes here. Oh, and then also this is good for more targeted feedback, kind of like we're talking about. So a kid might make an erroneous conclusion, and then you're like, well, actually, da-da-da-da. And it's easier if you have a smaller group. And then another note I have here, this is good for like things like annotating. Like if you're reading a novel, and there's one teacher, and there's like 25 kids, it might be weird. But if you can break it up, you can kind of model how to annotate the text and kind of get the kids more engaged. So, and when 4 or 5 of these kids have special needs, it helps to make the group smaller, as you probably imagine. All right, here's another one. This is another one I haven't done too much. What would you guys call this one?
Co-teaching.
Co-teaching? All right.
Interacting.
Interactive. A lot of times it's called team teaching. So the team teaching, that's something I haven't done too much either, to be honest. And it takes a lot of planning, and it's kind of the hard. You have to know the teacher. And a lot of times they say a co-teaching relationship, it takes like, maybe a year to really get it down. Like, for example, I worked with a teacher last year all year, and then this year we're really hitting it. And he's like, I like this, like, let's keep it going. But he said that because I'm leaving. So he's like, why are you leaving, man? But yeah, so basically, one reason they might do this is, like, I talked to one of the learning support teachers. You guys might know Teresa Pace, or I don't know if you guys know. But she said that what she's done is, like, in a biology class, the teacher will teach some of the concepts, but then she'll come in right there with, like, a literacy angle, because that's her strong suit. So maybe, like, a comprehension. So reading comprehension. So they're kind of, the teacher's talking about content, and then she's like, this is how you frame this concept, and da-da-da-da-da. That makes sense? Oh yeah, and then also this is good for modeling things like Socratic seminars, like how to interact with people, how to like give feedback, peer editing. That's something I have done with team teaching, is like fish bowling, like, so we'll have like, we'll pretend to do something, and the kids are like, oh, that's how I do a peer thing. Okay, I got it. So it kind of is helpful for that. All right, what about this one? What would you call this one?
Small group instruction.
Small groups.
Stations.
Stations, that's what I was looking for. Stations. So this is one I use a lot. I like stations. It's super effective. I think in elementary you guys use stations a lot more. Like coming from a high school perspective and now middle school, you don't see this that often. So for me it's like revolutionary when we do it, But let me see. I was going to reference something. Well, guys, what do you think station teaching is good for? When is it good to have like a learning support teacher, then another group, and then the teacher?
When they're doing different things, they have different needs.
Definitely.
So it's like in our building right now, we call it the exact same thing, small group instruction, we do it for literacy. So like the teacher does, we actually have 4. So it will be the EA teaches one group, the homeroom teacher teaches another group, the learning specialist teaches a 3rd group, and then the 4th group is independent.
Okay, definitely. Yeah. And that's where I was thinking, that's where I got caught up when you mentioned differentiation, because I see more of the differentiation in this and then the next thing. So I'm going to show a couple examples real quick of how I've done it. One example is when I was in Ethiopia, we were in a pre-IB class, like it was kind of high level, like kind of like an honors class, and 4 or 5 of the students out of 17 were on my caseload. So like 2 had dyslexia, 1 has autism, and then a couple other specific learning disabilities. And during the writing process, this is a great time for us to break it up. We had stations. So we had station 1 was brainstorming and coming up with better ideas. So we kind of did some formative assessments. We said, oh, some of the kids' ideas are a little bit off. They need more help. And then station 2, we had people independently writing, like we're talking about independent groups. And then station 3 was a higher group. They needed to fix their thesis statement. So or not fix it, but just make it even better. And they needed to look at the rubric and really develop what they're doing. And so what we did was the content teacher did this one, which is a lot of times the special ed teacher or the learning support teacher does the lower group. But we felt that they really needed her whole spectrum of ideas to help them generate ideas. And then I'm a good writer, so I took the higher group and I took them to another room. And we kind of like doing that too, because a lot of times we don't want the same kids working with the learning support teacher. They get kind of labeled, they don't like it. We're kind of touching on that. And then also I pulled them next door to say, hey, anybody can go out, anybody can go in a separate group, whereas a lot of times pull out is seen as like a kid that can't read well, or something like that. So in the writing process, I like to do it a lot and help support all the learners.
Are the kids allowed to rotate within the groups?
So usually the way I do it, maybe elementary might have some other ideas, but we would kind of base where the kid is at. And you know, hey guys, if you're here, you're gonna start at station 1 and then move to station 2 and 3, kind of like that. So sometimes the kid can self-assess, be like, oh, things are good, I just need to work on my thesis, I'm gonna work in this group. And then some kids, we knew that their ideas were off from looking at their stuff, and then we said, okay, first you have to go here, and then you go here. And then,
Math, like, it might be a little different, like, you teach a concept and then you say, okay, I need to work with these kids. But you have, instead of kids practicing, you have other stations with kids practicing, or you might have the TA work with another concept that you want. But eventually you get the kids back rotating.
And then, I'm going to talk about math in a second, but with math, a lot of times we'll, like here at ASFM, at least in middle school and high school, we grade on 4 levels. Like a 1 is beginning, a 2 is developing, a 3 is meeting, and a 4 is like exceeding. Extending. So a lot of times our first station, our station 1, will be to get a 2. So we might cut out fractions, we might cut out some negative numbers, and like just focus on that key concept. And then station 2 is they might be working with the fractions, and they might have a scaffolded worksheet, or the teacher is working with them. And then station 3 is independent, and that's where they get that practice. Because the teacher that I work with, he always says, what does he say? Don't practice till you get it right, practice until you don't get it wrong. Does that sound right? Yeah. So it's like, you know, a lot of kids will get 1 right, they're like, I got it. And then, you know, they fail the quiz or something like that. So that is that. Let me show you. I was about to go math. So has anybody done stations besides our friend here in math? How do you do the stations in the math?
Same thing. So like based on the data you've been collecting with your kids from observations and how they've been doing with their classroom.
Lori never told us about data. What are you talking about? We're supposed to get data? What's it?
Then you just like do like stations based on what they need. Just like you said, like okay, these guys still can't do basic addition, like with 2-digit numbers. So you guys are gonna come see me on the carpet. You guys are gonna go over there and work on your like notebooks to do the problem solving that's on the board, and these guys are gonna go work with somebody else to do like higher level math problem solving.
Sounds good.
So like, depending on the subject, I find the kids move through stations slightly differently. Like with math, it's usually like a quicker switch around depending on their needs, and they might not hit all the stations depending on their needs and their like level of experience.
Yeah.
Same thing with writing. It's more flip-flop depending on their needs, whereas reading it's more, I find, more specific. They stay in the same station longer because they're targeting a specific thing, and it takes longer for them to get that.
So you got the Robins and the Blue Jays and all that stuff.
Oh, no.
I'm thinking back to the 80s. I don't even know. So guys, let me give you a math example that I've done. So in grade 8 math, recently we were doing graphing linear equations. So what we did was we gave them a warm-up, and then while the teacher was doing direct instruction, I was grading the warm-up, which I don't know what model that is. Is it one teach, one support, I guess? And so I graded it, and I ranked the kids in 3 levels. So one was basically beginning, and then others were developing, and then some they had it pretty well. So then we broke the class into 3 groups based on the warm-up. And these are the stations. So station 1 is either I was going to reteach the prerequisite skills, or I provide highly scaffolded worksheets, which I'll show in a second. So sometimes I like to do worksheets that are scaffolded and differentiated, so we don't have the group on the carpet, because in 8th grade the kids don't like to sit on the carpet with me, and it's just embarrassing and whatnot. No, but sometimes it's hard to group it up because kids don't want to be seen as different. So we'll have like a scaffolded worksheet instead of a small group. But and then station 2.
Sorry, Beckett. So they're all sitting in the class together, but some of them have a different
at times,
task in front of them.
So it'll be like, based on your warm up, here's this worksheet.
I got it.
Or you are going to do this, or we're going to work with these 5 kids over here, or I might pull a group out to a breakout room.
I'm just curious, because like the whole thing about the kids feeling like different, especially as they get older, they're like super socially motivated. Do they I've never taught older kids doing that method, but like, do they notice when they have a different worksheet than their friends, and does that freak them out too, or no, they don't?
I haven't had that, not here. I've had that in LA, working with kids with autism. Sometimes they perseverate on that, like on that idea.
Okay.
But here, no, because I think we're always talking about mastery and growth, and like the kids know, okay, I need to do this before I can do this, and we're really trying to get that growth mindset, I think.
And
I don't know.
there's one of your colleagues doing it in science as well. And they actually knew what level it was that they were working on.
Yeah.
And they seem to be fine with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I haven't seen a problem with it. I think, we're pretty transparent about it. All right, station 2, you might have kids doing a little bit of a review, something that's manageable, and they're getting immediate feedback from the teacher. So we're walking around and like really checking. And then station 3 might be the kids doing it independently. So that's kind of what we've done recently in this unit. And we found it works well because in the past, those kids are just failing, and we're like, what are we going to do? And if you have one teach, one support, that doesn't really do much. I'm like, okay, like you're just putting out fires all day. But breaking it up and differentiating is super helpful.
I really like that.
And by the way, guys, this presentation is on the website for Live Curious. If you, I see some people taking pictures. Feel free to take pictures, but you can download it. I have the Google slide link. All right, so here's an example. So the students did this as an exit ticket one day. So to step back, I don't know. Well, I'll just say that me and the teacher talked, and we said that kids need some help. We need to give them a formative assessment. Where they at? So we gave this as an exit ticket, and then I graded it and created groups, and then I came through and I developed this step-by-step scaffolded worksheet that really gives hints and gives tips on how to do it, and then asks some kind of guiding questions to really help the kids understand the concept better. Because sometimes kids will do stuff, but they don't know why. They're just like, yeah, I go up and then over, but they don't understand. So I'm trying to kind of get them thinking. What was I going to say? Yeah, that's pretty much, so this would be like one of those worksheets I just referenced. So if a kid really needed help, we'd be like, hey, do this first, and then you're going to move on to the independent work or something like that. All right, this is the last co-teaching model. What would you guys call this one? Or what did you guys call it?
Sorry, I just have a question for the last.
Oh, yeah.
group. So you need you need one teacher per station, or because you have 3 stations, 3 teachers?
So like a lot of times we'll have 2 stations, like a teacher and then a learning support, and then maybe like an independent station.
Okay.
That's kind of a common one.
Oh, okay.
And then what were you thinking?
Yeah, because I said, well, probably if we have 4 stations, like 1 teacher per station, like a lot.
Oh, yeah. And then, I mean, other times, like, you might have, like, 1 station with me, and then the teacher's floating, and there's 2 stations or something like that. Like, there's 2 stations, or there's 2 stations. Getting...
I guess it also depends on the grade that you are teaching, because you couldn't have, not very independent stations with, like, very young students, whereas you can have,
That's
I'm
true.
assuming, with, like, middle school, high schoolers, like an independent station, and you know that they're gonna...
Or maybe there is like a leader,
Exactly.
one student like who's in charge of the station.
That can get expensive, though. Don't you have to pay them?
You can also get a business. You can also have
Class
Oh, yeah.
in one of the stations if you don't have those.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, you could make a video, or you could get one from Khan Academy or something. All right, so guys, this one's called alternative teaching, and this is something I like to do a fair amount, but a lot of times they say don't do it too much. So the teachers realize that a certain group of students might need like a reteach or a review. So, they're like, oh, these kids aren't getting it. They need to have a separate instruction, or they need to learn in a different way, like we were talking about before. So some kids are more tactile, or some kids need a lot of like scaffolding during the reading to understand, or they just don't get the plot or something like that. So, or etc. So we do this in English and math a fair amount where I'm at. And let me just go over a couple examples real quick. So We had a short story unit in English. Oh,
Can you
yeah.
expand the screen just a little bit? I can't see your labels unless you want, if you could.
On this?
Is it different?
Yeah, I couldn't make it
You
bigger.
can't make it bigger.
But-
If you could just tell us what it says.
Yeah. So in English, they're doing short stories. A long story short, the kids were reading independently, or the teacher was reading to the kids. But some kids didn't understand all the concepts of the story and all the concepts of, character development and all that stuff. So what I did was I took a small group. We had like 5 short stories. And at a certain point, we're like, okay, let's pull a group. And so I developed this graphic organizer for the plot mountain or whatever you guys call it. And the kids would fill this out while we read, and it would reinforce this concept. Whereas 80% of the kids understood this intuitively. They read a story and they're like, okay, this is the exposition, this is the climax, but some kids didn't. And then we have a character chart, and we do the characterization down here as we read. So I'll say, what do you know about this character? Why do you know it? Stuff like that. So that's English, that's the alternative teaching. Some kids need that. If you don't do this, they're gonna be lost, right? What's up?
Sorry, just to see if I understood your explanation. So like for this last one, as your example here, this is the sheet you did with your alternate group,
Exactly.
whereas the rest of the class was just doing it in their head.
They just read, the teacher read the story, or
Okay.
the kids read it, and they did an activity.
Okay.
So my kids did this scaffolding thing, and then did the activity. So the content doesn't change. Like, we're not modifying anything, but we're just changing the approach on how the kids learn it. Yeah. And then here's an example for math. Recently, the kids failed a quiz, essentially. And so all the kids that failed the quiz, they had this reteach with me on the double block. Because we have 2-hour blocks on Wednesdays. So for part of that block, I pulled a group to my room, and we went over definitions, and we asked questions, and then we did a I do, we do, you do. Right? What's that?
The lessons.
Yeah, exactly. And then the kids kind of got a handle of this. I think we got 9 minutes left, is that right?
Yes.
All right, cool. So let me just skip through this a little bit. All right, let's go to this one. So guys, in your groups, can you figure out, like on the second page on the handout, it has a part where it says rarely, occasionally, or often. Can you guys take a minute and rank each co-teaching model on how often you think you should use it?
You should use it, or how often it is done, how often you should.
Should, because, right? And maybe don't write anything yet, because I'm going to show you the answers in a second. So just kind of discuss it and see what you think. Hey guys, for the sake of time, I'm getting a little nervous. We started a little bit late. Let me just give you the answers. So according to Ready, Set, Co-Teach, so I'm scaffolding this a little bit. So according to this Ready, Set, Co-Teach, rarely they said 1 teach, 1 observe, and 1 teacher, 1 teach, 1 support. So where the teachers were separated, rarely. Occasionally, alternative teaching, the one I was just talking about, where you pull the little groups, and team teaching, probably because it's so hard to plan it. Right? And then often parallel teaching, which I don't do that often, and then station teaching, which is my favorite to do. So that's where we're going with that. And then just a couple more slides real quick. I was going to have you fill out the handout, but maybe you can do that as some of you guys are taking notes as we went. We have some scenarios. I don't think we have time. Let's just do one scenario real quick. You guys ready? Yeah. All right. So, Mr. Cox and Miss Cadill, I'm done. I don't even know how to say that lady's name. Miss Cadill's class is reading Changing Weather, a rigorous grade level text to find text features. Most of the class is reading at or above grade level, while a handful of students are still below grade level for this portion of the lesson. Which approach is best? Stations? Alternative? All right, well, let's get one for the win. Alternative or stations? Somebody over here. Stations? No, I heard another alternative.
It's only one small group, then I'd say alternative.
Alternative? That's what we have here, alternative.
Yeah.
So we're saying most of the students are ready and they're kind of progressing, but one group needs a little extra help. Let's pull them out. All right, let me just go to real quick to the tips. So tips for co-teaching: meet regularly, plan, build a relationship, have a Google Drive or some way to collab. When I came to this school, they have Google Drive, and it saved my life in so many ways. Like the unit plans are there, the presentations, and I can see live how things are going. Atlas is really helpful. I can put all my resources that I've developed and they stay there forever, but then I can also see all the resources that the teachers have.
Some people might not know what Atlas is.
Oh yeah, sorry. Atlas is like a curriculum management system online. So you put your unit plan and all the resources online into a system, and you have your scope and sequence all lined up. And so it's just a curriculum mapping type of thing. Living the idea that they are not your kids or my kids. So I still deal with that to this day. To yesterday. You know, people are like, your kids are going to work in that group, and I'll be like, well, actually, let's use a formative assessment and let's figure out which kids need support, that type of thing. And then don't take things too personally. We're all there for the kids. You know, I've had teachers say things that were kind of rude and things like that, and I've heard other stories from other teachers, but we're all there for kids, so hopefully the teacher doesn't have like a vendetta against you. They just said something wrong or something. All right, and then know each other's strengths. Like, for example, I'm not good at math, and I work with 2 math teachers every day. And I tell them, I say, hey, this is not my strong suit. I'm good with socials, I'm good with English, and they know that, so they can explain things. So they'll be like, Beckett, you got that? And I'll be like, actually, wait, how does this work? Like, you know, instead of me pretending like, yeah, I'm a math specialist and I'm an English specialist, like, you know, I have my strengths, they have their strengths. And then, real quick, I mentioned earlier that if you don't have somebody to work with, you can still differentiate. So if you're just by yourself, you can still differentiate the content, the process, like what the kid does, and then the product, how they show their learning. So not every kid needs to do the same thing at all times, and you don't always have to have a learning support teacher. That's one reason I don't go to English as much, because the teacher does a lot of this already. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, you got that today? Okay. So we got that. All right. Final thought. Guys, remember, if you want to go beyond, you have to do different co-teaching models. If you have an assistant, or if you have a co-teacher and you just do one teach, one support, you don't deserve to wear a t-shirt like this. You don't get food out there in the hallway, none of that. And guys, here's some contact info. Like, if you get the presentation, you can follow me on Twitter. What else? Email. And then Ready, Set, Co-Teach. This is where I got some of the ideas. And this is their Twitter. And these are live links, so you can go to their website. They got a lot of cool co-teaching stuff. All right. Any last questions or anything? Yeah? Okay.
That was great, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Cool.